Welcome to the Real Board Loft. I'm Forman, and this is the long-awaited, you've been waiting for it, it is the Lost Puddle Fish. And the Puddle Fish is a new board from Lost, a new grovel, new fishy spin on the original Puddle Jumper. There's been a lot of variations of the Puddle Jumper, the original Puddle Jumper Squash, the Puddle Jumper Round Pin. There's also a Puddle Jumper made with LibTech that's a winger squash tail as well. But this is the newest addition to the Puddle Jumper family. And the Puddle Fish is a fishy spin on the Puddle Jumper design concept. So what does that mean? They've taken the original Puddle Jumper, they've moved the wide point a little bit further forward. They've also straightened out the rail line out the back of the board into this wide tail block inverted swallow right here. They flattened out the rocker a little bit in the back half of the board. And then also they put in a channel bottom out the back of the board as well, so you can look right up those channels right in here. All of these changes in the board have made it faster down the line. So basically drivier out of the turns. When you push into a turn and come out of that turn, you get more speed coming out of the turn and just more drive and more acceleration straight down the line. A much faster version of the Puddle Jumper. Still works really well as a grovel board and works really well like when you're in waves where some of those sections might not be makeable. This thing is just an absolute rocket ship down the line. We've had this board for about a month, and we've been able to surf it all over Cape Hatteras and a bunch of different sandy beach breaks and sandy point breaks, as well as recently taking it back to Puerto Rico. We just got back from the Puerto Rico trip, and there it was all reef, either reef breaks, with rights and lefts, or right-hand reef points, and just had an absolute blast on this board. And when Matt Biles was making this board, he was looking to equal the down the line speed, of the old school looking fish, like a Steve Liss twin keel, like twin pin, or big swallowtail fish, trying to equal that down the line, like blazing speed capability of that style of board, but just have something that's a lot more positive, has a lot more grip, isn't drifty like a fish, and then also has a more performance turn than an old school fish. And he's definitely done it with this board. The speed, I can tell you firsthand, the speed on this thing is insane. We have a few waves in Puerto Rico that we just love going to, and this board, hands down, like for as long as we've been going to Puerto Rico, this is the fastest board on those waves, like pretty much ever. Coming away from session after session, like that's the fastest that I've ever gone on that wave. So it definitely has the speed potential, and it just loves to be turned and like just pumping and pumping and pumping and getting the thing going faster and faster, and making sections that you normally wouldn't make on that wave. Like for sure, like a pro level surfer can make any section on any wave, but when you get it down into like the recreational level, the board definitely helps make sections that you normally can't make, and this one gives you the ability to make those sections. The thing that's cool about this board though is it doesn't have just the speed element of it, with like a lot of times sacrificing control. It still has a relatively thinner rail, and the ability to late drop into waves, the ability to ride it in better waves is there as well. The ability to ride it in super small waves. So like on some of those days, the waves would be, taking off like on a thigh high wave and having it go down to like knee high, and the board is still super fast. And then on the bigger side, we tested it in head to overhead waves, and on those waves as well, like the control of the board is still there. Like by losing that drifty element and then having the board be more locked in, you still have the ability to ride it in better surf, where normally you're not going to have that on an old school fish as much as far as the control. There's a lot of options fin wise. Our board came set up with a 5-fin FCS system, and the fin that you set up the board with, whether it be FCS or futures, I think really changes the way the board feels. The first setup that we used in this board was the FCS2 split keels, and that's real similar for the futures guys out there, that's real similar to the Lost Seaworthy, so it's that really raked back quad setup. That setup's got the most hold for the board, so as far as like the board having a really positive locked-in feel, quad mode, that's got the most positive locked-in, directional, down the line, drivey, confident feel for the board. Still releases in the turns because those fins are pretty vertical and narrow for the trailers, and that gives you good release off the top. But that one I think definitely had the best lock and hold and drive down the line with a nice confident feel. We also used 2 different conventional setups on the quads. One of them was just the standard Mayhem quad set, and that fin setup was really good. And so that's just like a normal, you know, a normal quad front, normal quad rear. That fin was, I think, the freest and like most frictionless. It was almost, a lot of times it would feel like there weren't even any fins back there. You're just flying and there's no drag on the fins whatsoever. And also it was the easiest to break free in the turns. Was also the loosest, meaning like the first few waves that you got on it, it took you a little bit to kind of find the sweet spot on the board and get those fins to lock in and feel confident under your feet. But once you got past that learning curve, it was definitely the most free and fast on the wave. Another setup worth checking out is leaving those same trailers in and then upsizing your front fins one size. So it's almost like a conservative, you know, like twin fin setup in the front with quad trailers in the back. And for that we use the Mayhem trailers with extra large performers in the front. And that setup was similar to the all Mayhem setup, but it just had more drive down the line and a little bit more positive connection to the wave, a little bit more confident feel without that looseness feel at the very beginning of surfing it. That was also a really good setup, and that's going to be really good like in just kind of gutless waves where you need to generate more power and more speed down the line. Like it'd be definitely worth trying to put a bigger set of quad fins in there in the front. Or excuse me, a bigger set of front fins in that quad setup, like an upsize on the front fins. And then the last fin setup that we used when we were down in Puerto Rico was something to try and break the line of the board. Like the board gets going so fast down the line, like kind of out of the envelope fast down the line, that everything starts becoming more flowing and not in a bad way, but like when you get going that fast, everything is speed oriented and like big long cars. And we wanted to try and harness that speed, but then also break the line on our turns. And so a lesson learned from riding a Christensen Nautilus, that's an ultra fast board that doesn't really need any more speed than what the actual board itself has. So you don't need to ride quads on that board in order to have it go fast. On those boards, we had used thrusters to really break the line of that speed-oriented board, and so we tried it on this board. It actually worked really well. When you look at this board, you wouldn't really think of putting a thruster in it, but if you're in a situation where you don't need that speed down the line, and you want to start doing more vertical turns off the bottom and off the top and like kind of snappy, like more pivotal turns, putting a thruster on the board really locks it into the pocket and allows the board to go a lot more vertical than the quads, and it's really noticeable. But I think on a board like this with the wider tail and the straighter outline, it's not something that you would necessarily think about doing from the beginning. You might be going more towards quad with the split keels or the Seaworthies or a standard quad or even a twin plus a trailer, but that thruster really works well in that type of wave where you just don't need that type of speed down the line and you want to do more turns. And because that thruster works, we didn't get to try it, but because that thruster works, definitely confident that like an MR twin plus a trailer would work, or the Futures T1. So a lot of different fin combinations, but it's definitely worth experimenting with it because of the speed capability of the board. There's a lot of different options that you can do to alter the turns. So okay, so flipping the board upside down, let's take a look at the bottom shape on this board. Taking a look at the board from nose to tail, take a straight edge, running it on the nose. We've got flat obviously all the way up here, then going into a single concave through here. Now as we bring it down, still into a single, we've got a double in here, but the rails are higher than the center of the board. And then when we come back into here, we have a double but the center line's higher than the rails. You get a little bit of rock right here, but concave on both sides of the stringer, and then into the channels, and then out the back. But here, when you're in that channel, you can see that's the high point right there. So really easy to rock through the turns. Again, like summing it up, this thing it's an absolute rocket ship. Like the changes that Matt made to the design were all made in an effort to bring out more speed and more drive to like an already proven shape. So the puddle jumper squash, I would say, would be the closest board to this, and it's just a straighter outline, you know, wide point forward, straighter outline out the back, and just a ton of speed generating capabilities. The tail on this board is definitely wide, so you want to choose your tail pad widely. You want to shoot it wide. That's WIDSELY, or maybe LEY, widely. You don't want to put like some narrow pinner thruster tail pad back here, because the tail will just eat it up like a little tiny poo-poo platter. So you want to get a big tail pad. This one right here is the Lost Back in Black wide tail pad. And even though it's a wide tail pad, it's still opening up a little bit to fill this out. So make sure when you're choosing a tail pad, choose something that's got a wide tail block and it's like got some big area to it that's going to fill the tail out. Don't just grab the thruster one out of your garage and chuck it on there, because it'll be super pinner on the tail. So the another thing while we're back here on the tail is this inverted swallow. You know, for one, the thing helps this with the combination of the channels. Makes this board look like, as Tommy put it, a year 2030 spaceship, like what the spaceships are going to look like in the year 2030. But what it also allows you to do is you get going so ridiculously fast on this board that you need to have some element of the design to harness that speed and like control that speed. And so if this tail were blocked off here, when you tried to go into a turn at those speeds, you wouldn't actually be able to sink the tail into the water. So this allows a little bit of pressure release when you're pushing the tail into the water at speed, as do the channels. The channels give you more drive out of the turns, and then they also give you more grip in the turns, or the best way to describe what a channel does for this board. So it gives you more speed, but it also gives like a better attachment to the water when you're going at those ultra high speeds. It's the Lost Puddle fish from Lost, obviously. And if you have any more questions on this board, you can give us a call at the shop, 252-987-6000, or you can look us up online, realwatersports.com/surfing. Thanks for tuning in. The Widesleys. It's a new mini series, only available on tube TVs.